you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today I'm going to be showing you a brand new build actually for the Stamina Dragonknight, and this is a combination of many things. Really stupid sustain, very tanky, really good damage, and fun, which sounds weird because normally if you have a fun build it doesn't do anything other than entertain. But this is viable, believe it or not, for all content. Normal everyday solo stuff, Maelstrom, dungeons including vet and hard mode and stuff like that, and trials including vet and hard modes as well. This is very strong and a ridiculous amount of fun to use. It's really good. Now of course, as well as presenting obviously a viable user-friendly build, you need to of course make sure that the gear is fairly easy to get, let's say. Now, the monster head and shoulder I am using on this does require a bit of farming. You have to be lucky with the keys from the Undaunted Pledges, and hopefully you get the right shoulder. And of course the helmet as well. It's not impossible to get, but it is quite difficult for some groups. Although if you're familiar with the dungeons and you run them all the time, you probably won't have much of a problem. Anyway, the rest of the sets that I'm using are actually open world. So you can go and farm them yourself, you can farm them with a couple of friends, or you can actually buy them off the market. And you don't need to worry too much about traits, because now that we have the transmutation system, you can actually change the trait to the desired one that you preference or that the build has if you don't have the right one. Also, a little bit strange, this actually works in PvP if you change your gear to impen, but it's not made for that. However, you're going to annoy some people with it because it's a bit dirty. Anyway, I'm going to get to the stats first of all. Hopefully none of the shinies fire off while I'm showing you. But we'll pop a potion. Glyph is on there. Almost 5k weapon damage, 4972. Now I saw that dip then, obviously because the glyph fell off, but don't worry, the traits we're using make sure that has almost 100% uptime as long as you follow your lights and heavies. So almost 5k weapon damage, 51% crit. Don't want to go too high on that, but we do want a good mid area. I'll explain that in a moment. We're sitting on 37.5k stamina. And we're also on 20.7k health, which is absolutely insane. We are tanky as hell, and we're not sacrificing anything to get there either. Now we're on 942 recovery, which is fine, because our sustain is covered by our heavies anyway. 64 points into stamina, and we're a stage 4 vampire, of course, for obvious reasons, which I will get to in case you don't already know, and we're using the Warrior Mundustone. Now, this is 284 at the moment. That's because one of my traits is not divines, one of the ones I want it to be, which is why we sit on 4972 weapon damage. We can actually break 5k if you change that last piece to the desired trait, although unfortunately at the moment it's impen. You'll see that in a moment. Anyway, let's get to the skills first of all. Very basic stuff, but I'll go over them in detail, of course, for those that don't understand. Venomous Claw, this is in your Ardent Flame skill line. Second ability you unlock, in fact. It starts off as a flame ability, but you can morph it to poison for stamina DPS. This is a very powerful dot, and it attaches to single targets. You can put it on multiple targets, but it sticks to each one that you put it onto. However, don't spam this. Make sure that you put it on the target and let it run out, because it lasts for 10 seconds, and the longer it lasts, the stronger it gets. So that's 10.5 seconds overall. But every 2 seconds it increases in strength by 12%. Very important to note that. I see people spamming this a lot. Don't do it. Beast Trap, or Rearming Trap, in fact. Fighters Guild skill line. Where have you gone? Last one. You do need to be quite high in the Fighters Guild to be able to do this. Not necessarily by rank via quests or anything like that, but you must kill Undead, Daedra, all that kind of stuff to progress this skill line. And as you do, you'll unlock these skills, and you need to get Beast Trap, which is the first morph of this, or the first variant of this, sorry, and you morph it to Rearming Trap. The reason we morph it to Rearming Trap is because once it runs out, it reapplies itself once. So instead of lasting 6 seconds and doing nice physical damage plus giving you a 10% increase to your damage, your crit damage I might add, minor force specifically, it pops twice. So you put it down on the ground, wrong ability, put it down on the ground there, that will capture whatever stands in it, and it will do 6 seconds worth of physical damage. Now if it's a boss, of course they can't be rooted, but that will still fire off and it will still do the damage, and you will still get 6 seconds worth of minor force. Crown Store is not where I want to be. However, the rearming version, which we have, Once that 6 seconds is up, it fires off again, and you get the buff again. So overall, you get 12 seconds instead of 6. Very, very powerful. Now we're using, there's a couple of flex slots here. You can change them out, but for now I'll explain what we're using, and I'll tell you what you can change later. Flames of Oblivion. Now this ability here, Flames of Oblivion, this is the last one, so it takes a while to unlock. You morph it to Flames of Oblivion, otherwise you get the healing version instead. And this gives you a kind of a duration-based ability, but it fires once every 5 seconds, which is a single target hit, by the way. It's a fireball, I know, and it normally scales off of Magicka if it's flame damage, but this particular skill scales off of your highest resource. So if you have high Magicka and you're a Mag DK, this will scale high with your Magicka. If you have high stamina, the same applies if you're a Stam DK. So it gives you major prophecy and major savagery, increasing your crit for both magic and physical damage. Chance, by the way, that is crit chance, by roughly 10%, and every 5 seconds it fires a fireball. Now, it hits the nearest target, so you can activate it without aggro and anything. You're not in a fight now, but as soon as you hit him, it will fire off. Okay, Deadly Cloak. This deals direct damage in area of effect once every 3 seconds, and it reduces all the damage you receive from any area of effect damage. Very, very strong. This is in the dual wield skill line, if I can find it. It's quite far down as the 4th skill that you unlock, but once you get it, morph it to Deadly Cloak as soon as possible. You can't go wrong with this. Very, very strong. This is a single target damage over time ability. It's the second one you unlock in the dual wield skill line. Morph it to Blood Craze, and you will get a physical bleed damage over time on the target, plus an initial hit. Now the bleed goes through resistances, so it doesn't matter what your penetration is, it doesn't matter what the boss's resistances are at the time, or whatever target you're up against, this will go through it, so it will do that damage. It's really, really nice, and it heals you once every 2 seconds. So we resist damage in area effect here, we heal off of this, and of course we have loads and loads of health. Flawless Dawnbreaker. This is on the bar as an oh shit button if you're running out of resources, which is very, very unlikely. But above all, this is here for the weapon damage. While slotted, you gain 5% increased weapon damage. Does a decent amount of damage if you use it, but I only ever use this, like I said, if you're in trouble and you need resources quickly, which I'll get to in the passives, or if the boss is almost dead and you've got nowhere near enough ultimate to fire off your other one, which is the banner, and I'll show you that in a moment, use this instead. But generally, it's on there just for the damage bonus. There are some points in the Fighters Guild for passives that will increase this furthermore, but I'll get to that in a bit. Back bar, important stuff. Vigor, first of all. Of course, you need a heal. I don't care how many staminas out there want to go squishy, squishy. You need a heal. Here's Vigor. Go into PvP, find a Zerg, surf it for a little while, maybe 4 hours tops, unlock it and get out. You're all good. This will heal you once a second for 5 seconds and any allies nearby in that area of effect. Very, very strong. It's your oh shit heal. You do need one of these on your bark because situations aren't always exactly as you expect them to be and things can go wrong. Plus, you take damage, so of course you're going to need it. Poison Injection. This is very, very simple. By the way, that's in the Assault skill line. I did mean to go over that. Go back. Assault, Assault, Assault. This isn't Cyrodiil. You need to gain Alliance points to get it. Second one down. So it's quite easy to unlock, I guess. 4 hours at least in PvP. Poison Injection. Bow. Where are we going? Up the top here. This takes forever to unlock. I do apologise if that's disappointing, but you need to be level 42 in the bow to unlock this skill. It will be Poison Arrow to start with. Change it to Poison Injection. You fire it at the target. It's a single target damage over time poison effect. Lasts for 10 seconds, and the lower their health is, the more aggressive it gets. I see a lot of people making mistakes with this and firing it only when the target is low health. Don't do that. Keep this in your rotation at all times. And if it's trash fights, make sure you try and put this on as many targets as possible from the start, not just when they're low. It's very, very strong overall, but then gets aggressive the lower their health. Caltrops. This isn't 100% essential. You don't have to go into PvP for hours and hours and hours to unlock it if you don't want to. However, I would highly recommend it because it is really nice AoE damage. It ticks over once every second rather than every 2 like most dots. It's very, very strong. I would highly recommend getting it. I think you need to be Assault 6 to get this. Assault 5 for Vigor, Assault 6 for this, I think. But this goes on your back bar. You fire this obviously once every rotation, and everything inside of it, which is a pretty big area of effect, will be damaged. It's quite nice. Hopefully none of my procs fire off because that will spoil the rest of the video. Don't fire. We're good. We're good. Didn't do anything. Okay, next one is Earth and Heart ability, Molten Armaments. Morph it to Molten Armaments, not igneous weapons, because this will give us an increased 40% damage to our heavy attacks. Fully charged heavy attacks, I might add. And we do use those a lot. You will get a lot from this. It's a very essential skill to the build, and most Dragonknights out there as well, because of its damage and because of its bonuses to the Earth and Heart passives, which I will get to shortly. Very, very strong indeed. Endless Hail. This is a very fast ticking damage over time. Area of effect ability. And basically you need to keep this on the target at all times. The Maelstrom weapon does buff this a hell of a lot, so I highly recommend getting one of those if you can. But this does damage every half a second for 10 seconds in a small area of effect. Really, really nice. Now, as far as unlocking it is concerned, it's in the bow skill line. It's a second ability, so you get it quite early on. It's called Volley when you first get it. Where is it gone? This is insane. This is your ultimate. Now, this does flame damage to everyone caught inside this once a second for 17 seconds. It applies major defile, reducing their healing received, which means, of course, if they are a healing enemy or a player, in fact, if you take it into PvP, which I probably wouldn't, you reduce the effectiveness of their heals. Also, this increases your damage, all of your damage, the damage that is already ticking over and the damage that you now reapply while the banner is active by 15%. And reduces any damage you receive by 15%, so you're even tankier still when you're inside this banner. Also, allies can take a synergy from it, chaining the enemies to the floor. Really, really solid. I would highly recommend using this as much as possible, not just for your resource game, which I'm getting to, but because it's very, very strong and adds some stupid DPS over this. This is just there for the stats. This is the ultimate you want to be using. Now to the passives. This is important. I'm not going to go over them in too much detail, but I will just underline the important stuff. Every single one of these is required because you're using this skill line a lot. You want to make sure you buff the damage, you buff the poison and burn and status effects so they actually do more damage as well. You want to add the snares so enemies aren't running away and all this kind of stuff. Increase the durations, of course, so that they last longer and obviously do more damage over that time. These are very, very essential to any Dragonknight build, especially if you're focusing on this skill line, whether it be stamina or magicka. Get these. Draconic Power, this we're not using anything in here, so I wouldn't say that any of these skills are particularly essential, although you can put resist buff on if you feel a little bit too squishy. This is for another day. I don't really use any of these for this build. However, a couple of passives are important. This one here, you do block, or you should be. This means you take less damage when you do. This isn't important, this isn't important. This is spell resistance increase, gotta have it. So the top one and the bottom one are the most important ones for this particular build. Earth and Heart, this stuff is broken. Do not leave home without filling up your Earth and Heart skill line to 50 soon as possible. Easiest way to do that is while you're leveling up. Slap on some of these skills, put them on your bar, and while you're gaining XP, each one will contribute more to your level up. It's faster. You need this to be 50 as soon as possible, and here's why. Increases duration of your Earth and Heart abilities. Of course, we are using one on our bar. We want to make sure it lasts as long as possible. Battle Roar, this is why you use the heavy cost ultimates instead of the low cost ultimates, because it's more efficient. 46 health, 46 magicka, and 46 stamina returned to you per point of ultimate cost. This costs 250. We get loads back. You can fill your bars with these, not to full of course, but you can get a lot of resources back from using expensive ultimates. Here, on the other hand, this is 125. This is half the cost, you'll get half the resources. It's not really worth it. Only use it if you're in trouble and you desperately need some resources, whether it be health, stamina, whatever. This all the time. Here, Earth and Heart abilities. If you cast one, you will give people within 30 meters, up to 6 people, 5% increased weapon damage, you included, for 20 seconds. And if you use an Earth and Heart ability, you gain 3 ultimate while in combat, once every 6 seconds at the minimum. So what you do is, for firing this, you gain minor brutality, you gain major sorcery, and so do your friends, although you don't need the sorcery, probably they do, and you gain ultimate as well. But because minor brutality lasts 20 seconds and the buff lasts nearly 40, don't let the 40 seconds run out. Reapply this once every 20 seconds and you'll constantly have that minor brutality buff. It's very, very important. Also, finally, if you press that button, you also get back 990 stamina. It gives you resources back. You hit that ability, you get so much back. 40% extra heavy attack damage, 20% increased spell damage for everyone else around you, 5% weapon damage for you and everybody else. You get stamina back and you get ultimate. It's disgusting. You've got to fill this skill line up as fast as possible. Dual wield, again, these are mostly self-explanatory, but you do need to get into the skill line and unlock all the passives. Make sure you get them all. I'll go over them briefly. Note, your lights, your heavies, and your dual wield abilities will do more damage against enemies under 25% health. That's very important to note, and you can use that to your advantage later on. Weapon damage increase, of course, reduction to cost, all that kind of stuff. This is important. This is why we're using one axe. You have an 8% chance to put a bleed on the enemy, doing 10.6k physical damage. In fact, it's more than that. 11.7k physical damage on your front bar, of course, over 6 seconds. And it's a bleed, so it goes through resistances. This happens a lot more than people would like to admit. It's very, very powerful. And of course, we're using a dagger for the increased crit. However, we are using a lot of flat damage on this particular build. We're using lots of dots, but we're using a lot of flat damage that cannot crit. So, that's why we have 50% instead of where I would normally push for 60, 65. You don't really need to push too much crit when your damage is flat and can't crit. So, if you don't have a dagger, or if you can't get hold of one, or even if you preference something else, you can actually use a sword instead to buff your overall damage by 2.5%, whereas the crit won't necessarily do that. The crit will only work for your skills, and your lights and your heavies. It won't work for the procs, which you'll see in a moment, and it will make a lot more sense. But this is a choice. I preference the axe and the dagger just to give me a little more crits for my skills, but if you want to use a sword, you can. I definitely would highly recommend one axe though. Definitely want that bleed. Very, very strong. The bow, and again, get every single one of these. They help to your sustain, they help for your crit, they help for your reduction to cost, and of course they stack damage. The more lights you throw in, the more damage you stack over 5 seconds, but don't go nuts with this one. It's not a bow build, it's just using one. So just get the benefits that you can. You don't have to go all the way to max, because otherwise the rest of your DPS will suffer. We can probably get 2, maybe 3 light attacks off on the back bar rotation, which I will explain, instead of the 5. But don't worry, it's not detrimental to your damage. It's very, very strong just to have as a passive. Also, make sure you get this. If you're going into Maelstrom, you're going to want to move quickly. Dodge roll, 5 seconds of fast running. Very, very handy. But don't over abuse it, because your dodge roll costs more if you do them too close to each other. See, there's a cooldown, and now it's going to start costing more. So be careful. Medium armor. We're actually using 3 different types of armor. We're using medium, light, and heavy. But we're using 5 medium. So for 5 medium, we get all these bonuses here, increasing our weapon damage, our recovery, and our reduction to cost. So these are very, very important. Get every single one of them. Don't miss any of them out. Light armor. These are not actually essential because we're only using 1 piece, but if you want the minor recovery bonuses and reduction to cost and a little bit of spell resistance, then you can go for these. Don't touch these, however. You need 5 pieces of light for these. We're only using 1. These will benefit you very, very slightly, but if you don't have the skill points, don't worry. It's not the end of the world. Heavy, however, I would highly recommend getting this. Don't touch this or this, because these are both for 5 heavy and we're not using those. But these top ones here, they do benefit to resistances. They do benefit your recovery and your return of resources if you get hit, although we don't have high recovery anyway because we're a vampire. But this one is very essential. For using a piece of heavy armor, per piece you get 2% additional max health. So we're using 1 piece. Take advantage of this bonus here. I wouldn't worry about those for now, they're not important. For this, vampire is 10% recovery to stamina and magicka across the board just for being a vampire. Crazy stuff. Also, the lower your health, under 50%, so from 50 and below, you take reduced damage up to a maximum of 33%. That makes you tanky as hell. We have 20.7k health, we have reduction to AoE damage, we have heals in our rotation, and we take less damage when we go low. This is very, very strong. I highly recommend it for everybody out there. Vampires are nuts on DPS, on healers, and on tanks. And don't be scared of fire. Yes, you take more damage from fire, but as I've said before, most things from fire either fire straight at you, which means you can block, or they're on the floor, which means you can move out of it. And here's a big one for AS, for VAS, for Asylum Sanctorium, if you would like. I have seen a lot of people complaining about Vampire because there's a fire mechanic. The reduction to the damage you take is all damage. So for the small amount of fire there is in the game, do you really want to make yourself susceptible to damage for the rest of the game? Also, just to note, that fire area of effect, we tested it. We tested it. And guess what happens when you're in that fire and you activate this? Say, for example, the fire lands on the ground and you get caught. What do? You're dead, right? Because I'm a squishy stamina. False. Press this. You take no damage. Do you know why? Because this, big bonus to Vampire. Your recovery and your ability to mitigate damage. Doesn't matter if it's fire or not, you can mitigate damage by using Mist Form. 75% reduction to the damage you receive while you're in Mist Form. So if you're in Vass, whether or normal, if you're in Asylum Sanctorium or you're in Vet Asylum Sanctorium, and many other trials as well, as long as it's not a direct heavy attack from a boss, if you're going to get caught in that AoE and you think that it's going to kill you because there's nothing else you can do, you can't get anywhere, you're definitely not going to get out of it, pop this, you're fine. Also, when you spread out as well to get away from the lightning, put this on, move backwards. You will take barely any damage at all. Tried and tested. Use your brain when you're a vampire. Don't just assume that fire is bad, find a way around it. And this is in their skill line. That's why they don't have many skills, because they're strong as hell and they don't need that many. So, there's a point for you to remember. Vampire is very powerful, and yes, of course, you can utilize that in other areas as well, including Sanctum. If you get caught in poison, there's nothing else you can do and you're going to die, or even if you get caught in lightning, that will help. Just remember, you can't receive a heal while you're in there. You can receive a purge, you can receive cleansers and all that kind of stuff, but you can't receive a heal. So just stay in the mist for a little while, get out, and then receive a heal afterwards. It's a really strong skill. What else have we got? Passive-wise. Vampires we just went over. Fighters Guild, these are essential. Now, I am using one Fighters Guild ability and one ultimate. They both count as Fighters Guild skills regardless. So instead of just getting 3% for the one ability I have, I also get 3% for the ultimate as well. Even though it gives me 5% already, I get a further 3%. So 3% for having this on a bar, 5% because it's there in the first place, and another 3% for the Beast Trap. That's 3% per skill. Your weapon damage is increased. Make sure you get Intimidating Presence to reduce the cost of your Beast Trap. Also make sure you get this. When you kill undead, Daedra or werewolves, you will gain 9 ultimate per kill. Very important. And of course, this increases your Fighters Guild ability damage to undead, Daedra and werewolves by 20%. So if they happen to be that type of target and they get in the Beast Trap, you'll do more damage to them. Mage's Guild isn't important. Undaunted is essential. Take synergies for God's sake, you get resources back and they're beneficial to you and or the group or the performance of the fight anyway, so you do need to take synergies. Make sure you pick them up all the time. And secondly, and most importantly of all, make sure you get Undaunted 9, so then every type of armor you're wearing, you'll gain 2% of all resources. Max stamina, max magic and max health. We're using 3 types. 1 light, 1 heavy, 5 medium. 3 different types. 6% across the board. That's why our resources are so high. We've already been over those for the ones we need. The passives are for PvP, so I'll ignore those for now. We are Imperial, so we have a massive 12% health bonus. We are getting 10% max stamina, which is exactly the same as a Red Guard, and when I show you the demonstration, you'll know why you do not need to be a Red Guard to perform. You do not struggle with stamina on this build. Also Red Diamond, which is essential as well. You have a 10% chance with your melee attacks to heal you for 6% of your max health. We have almost 21k health, that 6% is going to count. And it bases off of mending, as in minor and major if you have those flying around. Minor and major vitality, healing received, any bonuses like that, you will increase this as well. So for hitting, you heal. Very strong, and above all, medicinal use. Max this out, your potions will last 47 seconds, and your cooldown is 45, if they're crafted, mind. This is essential to get. That means you can keep your uptime on your potions all the time. You can have infinite recovery bonuses, major brutality, major sorcery, major savagery, all these different types of bonuses that you can pick up from potions. They will last the whole duration. So I have put a link in the description for an alchemy guide where you can actually get to max level in 15 minutes flat. But just note, you don't have to have all these bonuses. You don't have to have them all. You can just max it out. Get this to 50 so you can unlock level 3 of this, then dump all your skill points again and just have this passive alone. You don't have to be a potion crafter for life. You can just get rid of the points afterwards. Okay, Now I'm going to get to the gear, and you are going to laugh to start with, but then you're going to laugh even harder when you see this working, because it works really, really well, and it's crazy, crazy freaking fun to use. So, first of all, don't laugh, I said. Where's the helmet? Vulcan Scoria. He's a light helmet in infused. You can use a heavy infused instead if you prefer, but this is the one I've got to hand. Then, a Vulcan Scoria shoulder, of course. This is heavy because my helmet's light. If my helmet was heavy, you could have this light instead. It's up to you whichever order you put them in. Unfortunately, this is the trait I was talking about. I do want this in Divines, not Impen, so I will change that trait later. I've spent 350, nearly 400 stones already on builds. I am out. I need some more. So change this to Divines. It's very important. However, the sets. We're using Vulcan Scoria, which fires off of all your damage over time abilities. So we have max health, which is huge. We also have an 8% chance from our dots, which we have loads of, to make a fireball doing 10k damage, launch out of the sky, and then do area of effect damage when it lands. Once every 5 seconds. So that's going to fire all the time. So we're Dragonknight, we have fire coming out of the sky. Perfect. And we're tanky. We're a knight. We have health. Brilliant. Red Mountain. Now, I'm using one known honed. It doesn't have to be a dagger. You can have the axe known honed if you want. You can trait change this. One known honed for the increased weapon damage. Now, please note that known honed needs to be in your main hand for you to get the benefit. In this hand, you get bugger all. This is where you want it. In the offhand, I'm using an axe. This is for the bleed. This is for the crit. But I did mention a little while ago, make sure you have an axe for the bleed. But this could be a sword or a mace. It's entirely up to you. Don't go looking for the dagger, which may cost you several hundred thousand gold, in fact, when you could pick up a mace or a sword for about 3k and then change the trait yourself. This is fine. Poison damage on here. Weapon and spell damage glyph on here. Infused specifically because you normally have a 1 second cooldown on glyphs if they last 5 seconds, because the cooldown is 6. But because we're using infused, the cooldown is 0, which means when it runs out, we can reapply it instantly, allowing this to follow over onto our back bar as well as our front. You have a really high uptime on this. So just like my non-infused DK as it got changed to, known honed on the main one, infused on the second, but make sure the glyph for the weapon and spell damage is in here to increase the strength of it. Maelstrom bow, if you can get hold of it. If you can't, don't worry. You can just have a red mountain bow on the back instead, or a crafted one. It's absolutely fine. But to optimize, if you can get a Maelstrom bow, do it, because it increases your volley ticks a stupid amount. Now, I'm going to explain what these two sets do, because I haven't gone over the second one yet. This gives you weapon damage, stamina, and crit. So crit, obviously crit chance, so we can do more damage. Stamina to contribute mostly towards our skills, so we do more damage on our skills. And weapon damage to boost the skills, but above all, boost our lights and heavies, which we do use a lot. Then, when you deal damage with a weapon ability, you have 10% chance to spawn a volcano which fires at the enemy. It's awesome. It does nearly 10k damage on impact, and this can occur once every 2 seconds, so it's got a ridiculous cooldown. It's very, very quick. This is weapon ability specific, so lights, heavies, and your dual wield abilities or your bow abilities. They have to be weapon abilities, not your class stuff. But it fires all the time. So you have a fireball coming out of this. You have a fireball coming out of this. So 5 second cooldown, 2 second cooldown. So you can already see that we've got 2 procs that do not crit, but that they do direct damage. Then finally, I know a lot of people have seen this and gone, oh my god, it's a crap set. And to be honest, I even looked at it and thought it was a bit of a gimmick to start with, but I've been doing a lot of testing lately, and I've put this alongside of it, and it's really, really nice. Not to mention it's fun as hell. And this is very, very strong, actually. It gives you crit chance, which is nice for your skills, of course. Physical penetration, we're not using any major physical penetration sets or anything, so this does benefits for us for that. And weapon damage, of course, increasing our flat physical damage from our weapons, meaning lights and heavies, and of course contributing to our skills and our flat procs as well. It's very, very nice. And at the end, when you deal damage, you have a 10% chance, 10% again, just like the Red Mountain, to call a murder of crows around you for 12 seconds. What this will do is once every 3 seconds for 12 seconds, so 4 hits, and 1 initially, I believe, so 5 in total, it will hit the enemy for 5k per hit. Penetration permitting, of course, with a 3 second cooldown. So it's got a 15 second cooldown and lasts for 12. So just for 3 seconds every time it's cast, we don't do nothing. This procs a lot. So does this, and so does this. So for doing our rotations, we have almost 10k fireballs flying out. We have almost 10k again fireballs flying out, and we have almost 5k pecks from these crows launching at targets once every 3 seconds. I think you can see where I'm going with this. This is broken. We have good penetration, really high stam, really high weapon damage, decent crit, and I'm going to show you rotation as to how nuts this is. Don't forget, the jewelry and the red mountain can go in any order. It's entirely up to you. Just make sure that you put weapon damage on all of them. Put stamina on all of these, of course, as they come with those anyway, but above all these, because these don't. Make sure you enchant those. And of course, make sure that trait-wise, you have infused on the big pieces, divines on the small. So head, chest, and legs need to be infused, and everything else divines. Now, this is the part where I show you... No, I'm not going to show you the rotation just yet, actually. I'm going to show you the CPs. Same as before. 18 in Ironclad to reduce direct damage. 75 in Hardy, 75 Elemental Defender, and 51 Thick Skinned. This will reduce the damage over time effects you take, so the ticks you take from a dot, and these will flat out resist the damage type they are alongside this. They all work together. Do not put any more than 75 points in here. As far as jump points are concerned, you will only get a benefit from these if you hit a percentage value. What I mean by that is an actual flat one, so 14%, 15%, 16%, whatever that actual first number is, not the decimals. The decimals do not count. So if you want to get 15% out of this, you need to go all the way to 100 points, because it's going to take you 25 points to get there. Look at the green text. The next upgrade is 14.07. The decimal doesn't give you any benefit, so that would be useless. 25 points in here and 25 points in here, making these both 100, would give you 1% to each, and you'd lose 19% in your dot reduction. So play with your CPs and make sense of them rather than going straight out 100, because that is stupid. Stacking too many CPs will not benefit you because you'll lose out on something else. 11 into quick recovery, increasing your healing received, including the ones that you do, not just the ones you get from other people. And above all, I mean, this is to hit a jump point, that's why I've got 11, not 10, because 10 would be just under, but 10 is what I want really in this tree, so I can take less damage while resurrecting people. 34 into Warlord to reduce the cost of break free. You will be doing that quite a lot in PVE, so it helps to reduce the cost. 75 points into Tenacity, making sure our heavy attacks restore more stamina. And of course, 14 into Recovery, making sure we recover stamina anyway. Now again, the same applies to these. Do not spend any more than 75 points in here, because it's going to cost you a whole 25 points to get 1% benefit. It's a waste. 44 points into Dodge Roll reduction cost. We do Dodge Roll to evade damage as a stamina quite a lot, so we want to reduce the cost. And 2 points into Shadow Ward. Basically, the reason that's in here is because all of our CPs at the moment are hitting bang on the jump points, and any of 2 points in any of these skills will give us only decimal points, decimal bonuses, which doesn't actually affect us. So 2 points into something is better than 2 points into nothing. 2 points into here will put this to about 17.5, just over, which won't count. 2 points into here does give us 1% to our block cost reduction, so it does help us. Use your points wisely. 19 points into this will increase our light and heavy attack damage by 12%. Don't forget, we've already got a 40% increase. 56 into here. This is very important to the build. This is for single target or direct damage attacks. Our Blade Cloak is actually a direct damage attack, despite it being an area of effect, because it's not a dot. Our light and heavy attacks are direct damage. Our Valken Scoria, our Red Mountain, and the budgies, the birds, the crows, they also do direct damage. We have lots and lots of direct damage. Also, Flames of Oblivion is direct damage as well. The initial hit on some of our dots is direct damage. Our Poison Injection initial hit and our light attacks are all direct damage. Our Caltrops initial hit is direct damage. This benefits us a lot. Not only that, if you fit your CPs this way, you have 70 points in this tree, meaning that your lights and heavies do additional damage when the targets have low health. Not only do our dual wields increase that, but so do our light and heavies passively for us before we even get to those skill points. So we actually have an execute if we just carry on doing what we're doing. The rest of them, we are doing a lot of physical and poison damage, so we need to boost that as much as possible without going into too many diminished returns. So 56 in here is just fine. You can go to 64, but you're only going to get 1%, so you might as well use them elsewhere. We don't have a huge amount of penetration, and if you look at the screen, you'll see a couple of examples as to where your penetration comes from if you're in an optimized situation, but this is absolutely fine for us at the moment, especially if your tank is taunting anyway, because that'll push you roughly to 8k penetration before you even start, which means you're not going to be very far off of cap once you get all the buffs in. In fact, you can hit cap quite easily as long as people are benefiting you in that manner. You can mess with this some more though if you're not comfortable. It's up to you. 23 into precise strikes. The reason I haven't gone 48 with this like I usually do is because everything I'm doing is a mixture of damage types. Some are procs, direct damage, some are dots from my skills. Direct damage from your procs cannot crit, and that's a very large percentage of my DPS. So I don't want to push crit damage into that because I don't crit them. However, the stuff that I do crit, I do want to push it. So I have a little bit in here. Thaumaturge as well. I normally put a lot more points into this because everything a DK does traditionally is a dot. But the procs I'm using, the 3 major ones which fire all the bloody time, are not dots. So I put Master at Arms to buff those, and Thaumaturge to buff my skills. It's a very, very balanced setup as far as CPs are concerned. I know you see people generally just doing the same layout over and over and over and over. Educate yourself a little bit. Not every single setup needs the same CP distribution. You need to make sure that you balance out what benefits you and your particular rotation stroke build at the time. Very, very important to note. Okay, now I'm going to show you a brief rotation. I can confirm that there are some skills that you can change to benefit certain situations. So, for example, if you're in a situation where there's not too much area of effect damage coming in and you can get away with killing stuff really quickly, maybe it's a big trash pull and stuff like that, you can change Deadly Cloak to Steel Tornado if you prefer. Meaning that if things go low health, you just spin to win. Now what this will do, one of those, wrong bar, this one, hits every target around you for X amount of damage. The lower their health, the more damage it does. It's expensive, so don't over spam it, but if you're in the middle of loads and loads and loads of ads, you can finish them off quite quickly. Especially in Maelstrom as well. Very, very handy. But generally I just put Deadly Cloak on because I can keep that in my rotation quite nicely. Also, you can change, if you don't have Caltrops and if you don't intend on farming it, you can actually put Noxus Breath on instead. This will debuff the targets in front of you with Major Fracture. I know the tank does it anyway, but this will do it in area of effect. Plus it does a decent amount of poison damage to every target hit. It's very, very nice and goes in exactly the same position in your rotation. The 2 skills, by the way, Steel Tornado is in the dual wield and Noxus Breath is in Ardent Flame. That's up to you though. You don't have to actually do that. The setup that we're using is just fine. Basically, make sure that Molten Armaments is on at all times. You need to cast it once every second rotation. Also, you need to make sure Flames of Oblivion... Try again. You need to make sure Flames of Oblivion is on all the time. Sorry, spitting feathers. So, keep this on. Keep this on. Now, what you need to do, Beast Trap first. Swap bars. Volley. Light attack. Poison injection. You can see all the stuff firing off. Light attack. Caltrops. Swap. Heavy. Venom Claw. Heavy. Render Slashes. Heavy. Blade Cloak. Light. Oblivion. Light. Beast Trap. Swap. Volley. Light. Poison Injection. Light. Molten Armaments. Caltrops. Swap. Now you'll notice on my first, you can see all the stuff firing off. This is where I'm getting to. It's fun as hell. Now my first rotation on the back bar, I just volley, light, poison, light, caltrops, swap. Second time, volley, light, poison, light, weapons, caltrops, swap. Now the reason I do that is because of the length. My God, it's going to go on forever. The length of the rotation kind of just fits, so I can get away with firing molten armaments off every 2 rotations, and allow me to keep up that minor brutality on top of everything else. Plus giving me stamina back and everything like that. So it's very, very similar to the infused DK rotation, except instead of firing off rapid strikes, you just heavy dot, heavy dot, heavy dot, light, flame. Hang on, let me do it here. 1 heavy, 1 dot, 1 heavy, 1 dot, 1 heavy, Deadly Cloak, light, flames, light, beast trap, swap. Very, very simple. And your sustain will not suffer at all. So I'm gonna kill this dude real quick. You won't see a DPS pass on it because it's irrelevant at this moment in time. But I can show you a quick clip in a moment of a good test with just a taunt added. So you can get an idea of what to expect. But I'm gonna do this fast. I will write this down on the website as well as far as the written rotation is concerned, so you can see it written down, so it's less confusing. Come on, Stop being aggressive. There you go. Activate this before the fight. Beast trap. Here we go. This is too much fun. Look at all the shit firing off. Where's the budgies? Oh yes, there we go. Too much. And the damage is fucking insane. It's not just fun, it actually works. And you're not going to die very easy either. 20k, 20.7k health in an optimized environment with a trial buffs and all that kind of stuff. You got warhorns firing left, right and center, or minor toughness, whatever variant of it you have, whether it be a buff from a warden or an actual warhorn. Plus Eben, you're laughing. Fired my abilities in the wrong order then, but never mind. I think you hit 23k in a trial. Health-wise, I mean. Not DPS. DPS you can go 35, 38 comfortably once you get the rotation down. In fact, they can get 38 out of this quite consistently. But in a trial, it obviously goes a lot more than that. Look at all those procs. Shiny, shiny. And stamina's not a problem. I went a bit fast at the end there, so I could have managed to make that even more efficient. Anyway, you get the idea. I'm going to give you a quick demonstration right now of me firing this off with... Look at that. Budgies are out again. Look, get him. Get him. It's fucking nuts. Should put a dot on him for Falcon's Courier as well. Here it comes. Boom! Enjoy. Love it. Okay. I'm going to show you a quick demonstration, just showing you the full rotation with a taunt, and you can see the DPS that you get out of it as well. You can get a lot more, depends on what buffs you got applied. There's no major buffs applied in this, it's just a taunt, so my actual penetration is only hitting 8k. I know a lot of you out there like to put on the Lover Stone and throw in loads of extra random stuff to cheat a DPS test, but honestly I'm going to show you a raw one, and then you can do it yourself later on and add all the extra bonuses and see where you can really go with it. Check it out. Okay, so hopefully that helped. That is a lot of fun. It's very, very viable. It's survivable. It's sustainable. It hits like a fucking steam train. And there's stuff firing out of the air the whole time. Now, just to know, this is a PvE build. But PvP, this does actually work. You can impen all your gear out, run up to people, slap them with a couple of dots, and they die. It's a bit annoying. But hopefully they don't nerf it for the purpose of that. This is really, really fun build. Okay, so first of all, thank you all very, very much for supporting so far. If you're not subscribing, please do hit that button. It is free. Furthermore, if you want to help support the channel outside of YouTube, there are links in the description for Patreon, for Twitter, Facebook, and of course the website xynodegaming.com. Once again, thank you all very, very much for watching, and bye-bye.